Okay, so you want to own a movie production company. You find the scripts, hire the stars, put your name on the poster, and watch the money roll in every time a blockbuster opens at number one. Here is what almost nobody tells you. In 2023, Disney released four major films: The Marvels, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Haunted Mansion, and Wish, and lost a combined $628 million across all four of them. Four films, $628 million. Gone. And Disney is the most powerful entertainment company on Earth, sitting on some of the most valuable characters and brands in history. If it can happen to them, it can happen to you. And understanding exactly why it happens is the only way to survive in this business. Let us start at the beginning, because most people misunderstand what a movie production company actually is. A production company is not the same thing as a movie studio, even though the words get used interchangeably all the time. A studio, think Warner Brothers, Universal, Paramount, is a massive machine with its own global distribution network, its own marketing departments, and decades of relationships with cinema chains around the world. It has the infrastructure to put a film in front of audiences in 190 countries simultaneously. A production company is a different animal. It develops ideas. It buys rights to books, scripts, and stories. It hires writers to turn those ideas into screenplays. It finds directors. It packages the creative elements together. It raises the money to actually shoot the film. Then it either distributes the finished product itself, or it hands the film off to a studio that has the machinery to release it globally. Some production companies do everything. Some only handle the development and shoot, and then license the finished film to a distributor. The economics differ depending on which model you choose, but the fundamental challenge is the same in every case. You have to spend enormous amounts of money before you know whether anyone will show up to watch. That is the core problem of this business, and everything else flows from it. Before we get into the money, you need to understand what you are actually trying to own. The cameras are not the asset. The editing suite is not the asset. Even the actors, as important as they are not the asset. The asset is the intellectual property. When a production company owns the copyright to a successful character or story world, it owns something that can generate revenue for decades without ever shooting another frame of film. One successful film becomes sequels. It becomes merchandise. It becomes television adaptations. It becomes streaming rights sold repeatedly in different windows. It becomes theme park agreements. It becomes video games and books and clothing and toys sold in every country on Earth. Look at what George Lucas understood when he made the original Star Wars in 1977. He famously accepted a lower directing salary in exchange for keeping the merchandise rights to the film. That decision subsequently generated over $32 billion in merchandise revenue for his company, Lucasfilm, before Disney acquired it for $4 billion in 2012. The movie was never just a movie. It was a proof of concept for an intellectual property empire. The Pokémon franchise, which began as a video game in 1996, has now generated estimated total revenues of $115 billion. Of that, the box office across all the Pokémon films accounts for only about $1.2 billion. The other $113 billion came from merchandise, licensing, games, and every other channel that flows from owning the underlying intellectual property. This is why production companies fight so hard over copyright ownership in every contract negotiation. Whoever owns the rights owns the future. Now let us talk about the actual business of getting a movie made, because the financing structure of a film is one of the most complicated puzzles in commercial life. Every film requires enormous amounts of cash up front. Before a single day of shooting, before any ticket is sold, before any streaming platform has written a check. The production company has to assemble this money from multiple sources, because no single investor or bank is typically willing to carry the full exposure alone. The structure usually works in layers. At the base, you have what is called senior debt, loans from commercial banks or specialist film finance lenders. These lenders sit at the lowest risk position in the structure. They lend against things they can actually see and touch. Signed contracts from foreign distributors who have already agreed to pay a fixed sum for the rights to release the film in their territory, verified government tax credits, more on those shortly, and minimum guarantees from sales agents. Because these lenders have real contracts as collateral, they charge interest rates somewhere between 8% and 12% per year. Above that layer, you have what is called gap or mezzanine financing, money from specialist film funds that fills in the budget gap remaining after the bank money. These lenders accept more risk and charge accordingly, typically between 12% and 20% interest. Above all of that sits the equity capital, private investors, hedge funds, or studio co-financing partners who take the highest risk position in exchange for a share of the profits if the film performs. They are last in line to get paid back, which is why they negotiate for larger profit percentages up front. And then there are government incentives, which have become one of the most important tools in modern film finance. The United Kingdom, for example, currently offers a cash rebate of 34% on qualifying production expenditure spent in the UK. For smaller independent films with budgets below roughly $19 million, the rate increases to an effective net rebate of around 40%. Georgia in the United States offers a 30% transferable tax credit. Australia offers a 30% rebate for international productions filming there. Ireland offers a 32% tax incentive, with proposals to increase that for smaller films. What this means in practice is that if you shoot a $100 million film in the UK and all of that spending qualifies, the British government hands you back $34 million. That is not a loan. That is a cash payment. It does not need to be repaid. It dramatically reduces the amount of risk capital you need to raise from private investors. This is why so many major Hollywood productions film in the UK, Canada, Australia, and Ireland rather than in Los Angeles. The rebate structures effectively lower the cost of making the film before a ticket is ever sold. Here is the part that surprises most people who think about entering this business. A production company spends significant money on films that never get made. This phase is called development, and it's essentially the business of paying for possibilities. Before a camera rolls on a single frame, a production company might spend years and millions of dollars on a single project. You option the rights to a book or a script, meaning you pay a fee, sometimes as little as a few $1,000s and sometimes several $100,000, to lock in the exclusive right to develop it into a film for a set period, usually around 18 months. You hire writers. Scripts get revised again, sometimes thrown out entirely and started over. Each revision costs money. A top screenwriter in Hollywood earns between $250,000 and $1 million or more for a feature script. You hire a casting director to approach actors. You bring on a location scout, you commission concept art, you pay lawyers to clear the rights to every piece of music, every real location, every real person whose name appears in the story. And then the studio or the investors pass on the project, or the lead actor drops out, or a similar film opens and bombs, making the market suddenly unwilling to finance your version. All of that money is gone. The industry has a name for projects that get stuck in this phase and never escape it. Development hell. Many films spend years trapped there, consuming budget without producing anything you can sell. The production companies that survive this phase are the ones that treat options as cheap research. Spend small amounts on many projects, see which ones attract genuine interest from directors, actors, and financiers, and only commit larger development budgets once the signals are strong. People think of casting as an artistic choice. In reality, it is the closest thing this industry has to a bank guarantee. When you attach a recognizable actor to a film, something specific happens to the financing structure. An international sales agent, a company that pre-sells the rights to distribute your film in specific countries before it is made, evaluates the project based heavily on who is attached to it. If your lead actor has a strong track record in Germany, Japan, and the UK, the sales agent can project what distributors in those territories will pay for the rights. They issue what are called sales estimates. The bank then advances production loans against those estimates, treating them as collateral. This is why a film with a well-known lead actor is genuinely less risky than one with an unknown performer, even if the unknown actor might deliver a better performance. The known actor makes the financing stack possible. They are not just performing on screen. They are underwriting the loan. The contracts that protect this structure contain what are called essential element clauses. If the named actor leaves the film or is replaced with someone of lesser profile, the pre-sales contracts can be legally canceled, causing the entire financing structure to collapse simultaneously. Paying $40 or $50 million for a major star is, from a banker's perspective, often the cheapest way to ensure the rest of the $200 million budget can actually be raised. Here is what most people get completely wrong about film budgets. They assume the actors eat most of it. The reality is more complicated. Above-the-line costs, the director, the lead actors, the rights acquisition, typically account for around 30 to 35% of the total budget. Everything else flows into below-the-line costs that most audiences never think about. Crew wages for a major production involve hundreds of people paid union rates every single day. Cinematographers, camera operators, sound engineers, lighting technicians, set decorators, prop masters, hair and makeup artists, stunt coordinators, visual effects supervisors, all of them are on the clock from the first day of principal photography to the last. Equipment rentals for a major film run into the millions per week. Camera systems alone on a high-end production can cost tens of thousands of dollars per day to rent. Visual effects have become one of the largest line items in modern blockbusters. A film like The Marvels had a total budget reported at around $220 million in production costs alone, and a significant portion of that went to digital effects work, location fees, transportation, hotels, catering, insurance, permits. These costs add up faster than anyone outside the industry believes. And then there is the contingency fund. Professional financiers insist on a reserve equal to roughly 10% of the total direct production budget, held in escrow before they release a single dollar of the loan. This is because every day of delay during shooting costs enormous money. If weather forces you to abandon a location for 24 hours, you still owe the entire crew their full daily rate. The equipment is still on rent. The location holds its fee. A one-day delay on a major production can cost upward of $250,000. 2 weeks of unexpected delays can push a film into financial crisis before it is even finished. Because so much money is exposed to so many unpredictable events during a film shoot, production companies insure almost everything that can be insured. Cast insurance is perhaps the most critical policy. If a lead actor is injured or becomes ill during production, the cast insurer pays out to cover the cost of shutting down, rewriting, and restructuring the film. Before any actor is covered, they undergo comprehensive medical examinations. High-risk personal activities, skydiving, flying private aircraft, motorcycle racing are specifically excluded from coverage. The stakes on these policies are enormous. When Paul Walker died in an offset car accident in 2013 partway through the filming of Furious 7, Universal Pictures and its insurers faced what became the largest cast insurance claim in Hollywood history. The payout, estimated between $50 million and $70 million, covered the costs of halting production, completely rewriting the ending of the film, and using advanced digital technology to recreate Walker's face for scenes that had not yet been shot. Without that policy, a single accident would have erased tens of millions of dollars that could not be recovered. For an independent production company without a studio's financial cushion behind it, an uninsured event of that scale would mean bankruptcy. You have raised the money, you have finished the film. You think the hard part is over. It is not. Marketing a major studio release typically costs as much as making the film itself. For the top-performing blockbusters in 2024, the average marketing and distribution cost, what the industry calls the print and advertising budget, was $142 million. The average production cost for the same films was also $142 million. Same number. $1 spent making it, $1 spent telling people it exists. This is where independent production companies face their most brutal disadvantage. A major studio has established relationships with television networks, social media platforms, outdoor advertising companies, and entertainment journalists around the world. It can run a coordinated global campaign simultaneously in dozens of markets. It can buy the most visible advertising slots at the Super Bowl or the World Cup. It has the leverage to place its talent on every major talk show. An independent company trying to market a finished film without studio infrastructure faces a terrifying choice. Spend money you may not have on marketing that may not work, or watch a film you spent years making disappear into silence because nobody knows it exists. Five Nights at Freddy's in 2023 was produced for $20 million and then backed by a $60 million marketing campaign, 3 times the cost of making the film just to launch it. The Super Mario Bros. Movie paired a $100 million production budget with a $150 million global marketing push. The marketing is not optional. It is the difference between a film that reaches its audience and a film that dies on a hard drive. Here is the moment everyone misunderstands. Sunday afternoon, the weekend numbers come in. The headline says your film earned $800 million at the global box office. People congratulate you. The press calls it a hit. You did not receive $800 million. The first deductions are local taxes and charges in every country where the film played. Then come the theatrical splits, the share of ticket revenue that goes to the cinema operators rather than to you. In the United States and Canada, the studio or distributor typically keeps roughly 50 to 55% of ticket sales. Internationally, that share drops to around 40% on average. In China, foreign studios receive only around 25%, with the rest going to Chinese distributors and the government. Then the distributor takes its fee before you see a dollar, typically around 30% of what comes back from the theaters. Then marketing costs are deducted from the revenue. The studio does not absorb marketing as a sunk cost. It bills it back against the film's earnings before calculating whether a profit exists. After all of that, the average studio rental, the actual money flowing back toward recouping the production cost, amounts to roughly 45% of the global box office total, A general rule of thumb used by people who analyze these numbers professionally is this. For a major blockbuster to reach net profits, the total worldwide box office needs to reach 2.5 times the production budget. A film that cost $150 million to make needs to gross $375 million at the box office worldwide before it has recovered its costs. Not made a profit, recovered its costs. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny had a production budget of around $300 million. It would have needed to gross $750 million just to break even. It grossed $384 million worldwide. The final confirmed loss was $143 million. The headline box office number and the financial reality are not the same number. They are sometimes not even in the same hemisphere. Theaters are only the beginning of a film's earning life, and often not the most profitable part. After the theatrical run ends, typically somewhere between 45 and 90 days after release under current industry agreements, the film moves into a sequence of additional revenue windows that can generate income for decades. The first window after theaters is now typically premium digital rentals and purchases, where consumers pay somewhere between $5 and $20 to watch the film at home within weeks of its theatrical run ending. After that comes licensing to streaming platforms. When a film is sold to Netflix, Amazon Prime, or Apple TV Plus for their subscription services, the studio receives a lump sum licensing fee. Netflix pioneered what it calls cost-plus deals, where it covers the full budget of a production and adds a bonus of roughly 10 to 20% on top as profit for the producer in exchange for exclusive global rights in perpetuity. That guaranteed upfront payment eliminates risk, but it also eliminates the upside if the film turns out to be a massive hit, because all future rights belong to the platform. Beyond streaming comes pay television licensing, free-to-air broadcast rights, airline and hotel licensing. An airline pays somewhere between $1 and $2 per passenger per screening, which adds up millions across international long-haul routes, and eventually physical media sales to the collector market. A film that barely covers its costs during its theatrical release can, over 5 to 10 years of cycling through these windows, eventually reach profitability. This is why studios hold on to their libraries with such determination. Those old films keep generating checks long after everyone has stopped talking about them. No serious production company bets everything on one film. The studios that have survived for decades think in terms of portfolios, collections of films spread across different budget levels, different genres, and different risk profiles, designed so that the inevitable losses on some films are offset by the unexpected returns on others. A typical studio slate might combine 2 or 3 smaller films with budgets under $30 million, 2 or 3 mid-budget genre films in the $70 to $150 million range, and 1 or 2 major blockbusters above $200 million. The small films carry low financial exposure, but occasionally deliver enormous returns. The original Blair Witch Project cost $60,000 to make and gross $248 million worldwide. The blockbusters carry enormous exposure but drive the franchise ecosystems that generate revenue for years. This structure means that a single bad year does not necessarily end the company. When the Marvels, Indiana Jones, and The Flash all failed in the same calendar year, Disney absorbed losses of over $600 million. That is a genuinely painful number. But Disney's portfolio of profitable intellectual property, its parks, its merchandise, its streaming subscribers, its back catalog, provided enough of a financial cushion to absorb the shock without threatening the company's survival. An independent production company betting its entire capital on a single film has no such cushion. One failure ends everything. Here is what owning a movie production company actually looks like in practice. The optimistic scenario is this. You produce a mid-budget thriller for $45 million. You shoot it in the UK, where the government rebate returns roughly $15 million to you, bringing your net cash exposure to $30 million. You attach a well-known lead actor, which allows your sales agent to pre-sell the international rights for $18 million before shooting begins. Your bank advances $22 million against those pre-sales and the tax credit. Your equity investors contribute $8 million to cover the remaining gap. The film opens solidly, earning $130 million worldwide. The distributor takes its fee and recoups marketing costs. After the theatrical split, roughly $59 million flows back to the distribution waterfall. After deducting distribution fees and residuals, you net roughly $22 million. You then license the streaming rights for $8 million. Your total return is $30 million against a $30 million net cash investment. You doubled your money over 18 months, and you own the intellectual property for every future window. The realistic scenario is this. The same film opens to disappointing reviews. It earns $42 million worldwide. After splits, fees, and marketing recoupment, only 14 million flows back. You sell the streaming rights for 3 million. You have recovered 17 million of your 30 million investment. You have lost $13 million. You have spent 2 years of your life on it. And the intellectual property, which you still own, is now worth considerably less than it was before the film came out. Because audiences have already formed a negative opinion of it, the gap between those two outcomes on the same type of film is $25 million. That gap, the swing between a good outcome and a bad one on a single mid-budget production, is what makes this industry simultaneously irresistible and terrifying to investors. And notice that neither scenario involved anything catastrophic. Nobody got injured. There were no production delays. The film simply opened softer than hoped. That is all it takes to turn a viable project into a financial loss. The downside does not require a disaster. It just requires an audience that stayed home. The production companies that survive for decades are not always the ones making the most celebrated films. They are the ones that have figured out how to generate income that does not depend entirely on whether the next film is a hit. They build libraries. Every film they make, whether it succeeds or fails at the box office, adds another asset to a catalog that generates licensing income year after year. When a streaming platform needs content to fill its schedule, it calls the companies with deep libraries and writes checks. They build brands. Pixar spent years building a reputation for a specific kind of animated storytelling. That reputation became a financial asset. Audiences trusted the brand enough that marketing costs per film were lower than competitors. Because the brand itself did the work. They build franchise ecosystems. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, whatever its current challenges, was engineered from the beginning to create a self-reinforcing system where each film builds demand for the next one. The merchandise from one film sells while the next film is in production. The streaming subscription holds subscribers in between theatrical releases. The whole structure feeds itself, and they protect their intellectual property with extraordinary aggression because they understand that a character or a story world with genuine audience attachment is worth infinitely more than the film that introduced it. The movie you see on screen is the marketing campaign for everything that comes afterward. So the next time you watch a film that grossed $800 million at the box office, and you assume the people who made it are counting their money, remember what that $800 million actually is. It is gross revenue that will be divided among cinema operators, distributors, governments, marketing recovery funds, and investor waterfalls before the production company sees a dollar of net profit. It is the opening event of a decade-long monetization cycle across streaming, television, merchandise, and licensing that will determine whether the film was actually profitable. It is one bet in a portfolio of bets, some of which will win and some of which will lose, and the company's survival depends not on any single bet, but on whether the portfolio as a whole keeps moving forward. A movie production company sells entertainment. What it actually manages is uncertainty, every day, across every film in development, production, and release, in every market, at every budget level. The companies that last are the ones that never confuse the product with the business. The product is the film. The business is surviving long enough to make the next